Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. No one expected this name to appear in a federal courtroom ever again, let alone as a witness. But on day 9 of Sean Diddy Combs' explosive trial, Bill Cosby shuffled into the witness box, his face gaunt, voice deliberate, and purpose chillingly clear. When asked why he agreed to testify, Cosby didn't flinch. He looked straight at the jury and said, "Because what he did makes me look like an amateur." Gasps echoed through the chamber, and what followed was one of the most shocking testimonies of the entire case. Cosby laid bare details that hadn't even been submitted by the prosecution, allegations that turned heads, made headlines, and made even the judge pause. What did Cosby reveal? And why was this disgraced icon suddenly pointing the finger at Diddy? You're about to find out. No one in the courtroom could have anticipated when the prosecution handed the judge a sealed document marked Witness Order Level Omega. Murmurs filled the air. When the name inside was revealed to the defense team, they reportedly laughed out loud until the judge nodded and said, "Admissible." The courtroom fell silent. The name was Bill Cosby. The world had not seen Cosby in public since his release from prison, and the general public had assumed he would never testify in any courtroom again. His past had been etched into public memory, his legacy burned by scandal, disgrace, and legal warfare. But what no one knew until now was that Cosby had received a subpoena months prior, delivered under extreme secrecy. The reason? An FBI informant from his prison years claimed that Cosby was in possession of knowledge, and perhaps even evidence of events tied to Diddy's inner circle. Cosby did not initially respond, but once he reviewed the subpoena and discovered the case involved many of the same players from the elite circles he once moved through, something changed. According to his legal team, Cosby made a decision. He would testify, not to seek redemption, but because "what Diddy did makes me look like an amateur." That quote alone shook the courtroom. When Cosby was wheeled in, thinner and more fragile than the world remembered, he did not smile or wave. He clutched a small leather notebook, pressed against his chest as though it were a holy text. The prosecution nodded respectfully. Diddy's attorneys looked unsure whether to scoff or panic. The moment Cosby raised his hand and took the oath, the tone of the trial changed entirely. For many, the irony was thick. A convicted predator testifying against another alleged one, but the prosecution was strategic. If even Bill Cosby, once considered the face of CelebrityScandal, was willing to speak out about the darkness in Diddy's empire, how much worse must it be? Cosby opened his testimony with clarity. "I have no illusions about what I've done, but when I saw what he did, it chilled me. I stayed quiet because I thought the world wouldn't believe me. But now, they have to." The courtroom leaned in. The most unexpected witness had just dropped the opening bombshell. Cosby's second day on the stand began without cameras, per court order. But the courtroom was packed. Reporters clutched pens with white knuckles. Even the judge looked visibly tense. When Cosby adjusted his microphone, his voice trembled, but not from age. "I never thought I'd tell this story," he said. "But if I don't, you'll never understand just how deep the rot goes." He recounted a 2013 event held at a private compound outside Los Angeles. Described by invitees as an industry retreat, Cosby admitted he was there to build favor with music execs for his daughter's singing career. "I was supposed to just shake hands, smile, do the old man routine." But within an hour of arriving, Cosby realized this wasn't just a networking event. No phones, no press photos, and I noticed something that bothered me right away. Women being brought in through the back. None of them looked like they wanted to be there. Cosby paused. "I know that look," he said, his voice bitter. "I've seen it in the mirror." He claimed that when he entered one of the soundproof VIP lounges, he expected alcohol, maybe some performers. What he saw instead was a lineup of girls, some as young as 18, nervously standing by a curtain while security scanned the room. Cosby recalled one of Diddy's handlers, a man he referred to only as K, whispering to another man, "Combs wants red pics only, the ones who know how to stay quiet." Cosby was startled by the phrase and left the room, only to see Diddy himself a few minutes later. He smiled like nothing was wrong. like he owned the room. When Cosby asked him what was going on, Diddy reportedly replied with a grin, "You of all people shouldn't be asking that." The courtroom gasped. "I left. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell anyone. I justified it. But now I know what I saw wasn't just a party. It was a pipeline." Cosby claimed that he later received a gift from Diddy, a vintage watch, and a handwritten note that read, "Real men keep secrets." He turned the note over to the prosecution, now marked as Exhibit 43B. "I thought I was a monster," Cosby said to the jury, "but that man made me look like I was doing party tricks. What he did wasn't about sex. It was about control." The silence in the courtroom felt like a funeral. By the third day of testimony, Cosby was visibly weaker, but he insisted on returning. The court allowed him to be seated with a blanket over his legs. His eyes were red, and his hand never left the small leather notebook he had brought with him from day one. "I need to tell you about the tunnels," he said. He recalled a second encounter in 2014. He had been invited to an after-party in Miami, again under the guise of a legacy celebration. It was hosted in a private mansion Diddy allegedly used during Art Basel. Cosby had hesitated to attend, but pressure from peers convinced him. That night, a staff member offered to give him a tour of the real space. Cosby assumed it was a wine cellar or recording vault. Instead, he was led to a locked elevator. 2 security codes later, the doors opened and took him beneath the mansion. There were no cameras down there, Cosby said, only lights that flickered on motion sensors, and then the hallway started. Cement walls. It smelled like bleach and something else I won't describe. He was taken to what was described as the viewing room, a chamber with thick glass, soundproof walls, and a single screen embedded into the concrete. A tape was cued. "They didn't tell me what I was watching. I only watched 10 seconds, Cosby said. A girl, no older than 20, was sobbing. Someone off-screen was coaching her. Then someone else walked in with a Diddy necklace swinging around his neck. That's when I said stop, and they did, but not before saying he likes to rewatch the best ones." Cosby sat back in the witness chair and clutched his notebook tighter. "That was when I realized I was sitting in the middle of something that made Rikers look like a church picnic. And they didn't care. They wanted me to know. They wanted me to be scared." According to Cosby, he left the party without saying a word. 2 days later, a man approached his hotel elevator, handed him an unmarked envelope, and said only one thing: "Even ghosts don't talk." Inside the envelope was a photo of Cosby sitting in the viewing room. He never told anyone until now. "I thought I'd seen evil," Cosby said, shaking. "I hadn't, not until I met him." As the courtroom sat in tense silence, Bill Cosby shifted in the witness chair. His voice was hoarse but steady as he recounted a moment that drew audible gasps from the gallery. "What I saw, it wasn't just a party," he began. "It was something else, something hidden behind velvet and gold, behind music and luxury. But once you were inside, the mask came off." Cosby explained how certain gatherings thrown by Diddy had themes. Names like Crimson 10, Pulse Sync, and White Rapture weren't just elaborate titles for nightlife experiences. They were signals, he said, to people in the know. You didn't ask questions. You just played along, or you weren't invited back. He then claimed several well-known celebrities were in attendance at these exclusive events, adding, "They were there, but blindfolded by luxury. Champagne glasses in their hands, smiles on their faces. But not everyone realized what was in the drinks." According to Cosby, he once overheard a troubling phrase, "They won't remember what they signed if they forget what happened." He alleged the comment was made casually by Diddy to a small group of inner-circle guests, laughing as if it were a harmless joke. Then came the most haunting recollection, an incident in New York, where Cosby described witnessing a person being carried out of the venue wrapped in a blanket. There was no ambulance, no scene, just silence, and people kept dancing. The moment that shattered the room came when Cosby, slowly and carefully, pulled a folded napkin from his coat pocket. On it, the words, "She's only 17, were written in what he claimed was Diddy's handwriting. It was left on a side table next to the bar from that night. The courtroom erupted. The judge ordered silence, but the atmosphere had already shifted. What had been whispered rumors now echoed from the witness stand, under oath. The courtroom was unnervingly quiet as Bill Bill Cosby leaned forward on the witness stand. For someone whose own history had cast such a long shadow, he now spoke with the tone of a man reckoning with even darker truths. Truths he claimed to have witnessed firsthand. He recounted what he described as a nightmare night in Miami in 2004. A night that he said made him realize, for the first time, that the power he once thought he held was nothing compared to what Sean Combs was allegedly operating. "I was there because I was invited," Cosby said flatly. "I thought it was going to be music, drinks, and the usual industry talk, but it took a turn." He described being introduced to a Hollywood agent and told they were going to meet a rising star, a young model from France. "I thought she was maybe a new face for a fashion campaign. The way they talked about her, it sounded like she was already booked for greatness." Cosby claimed the meeting took place at a private residence, security everywhere, no cameras allowed, and all phones collected at the door. At first, I didn't think much of it, but it wasn't like a party. It was cold, controlled. People weren't really talking. They were watching. According to Cosby, the young model appeared visibly nervous when she was brought into the room. She sat down, smiled politely, but within minutes, I could tell she didn't want to be there. Cosby said she quietly asked one of the assistants if she could leave. She was told to relax, that Diddy would be down shortly. When Diddy arrived, Cosby said he was full of charm and jokes, acting like the host of a reality show. But the energy shifted when the girl once again expressed that she felt uncomfortable. "He looked at me," Cosby recalled, and said, "Relax, she'll thank us when she's famous." That was the moment Cosby said he stood up. "I told him he was going too far," he testified. "He laughed like I didn't get the joke. Then he looked at me and said, 'You don't know what far is.' And I believed him." Cosby said he left the gathering immediately, calling his driver and demanding to be taken back to the hotel. The prosecution then displayed travel records and flight logs that confirmed Cosby's arrival and departure from Miami matched the night in question. He closed his statement by saying, "That was the night I realized I wasn't the most dangerous man in the room. Not even close. Whatever I thought I knew about fame and power, it paled in comparison to what I saw in his eyes that night." The courtroom remained silent for several seconds. Even the defense seemed momentarily frozen, as if unsure how to counter the testimony without opening a door they couldn't close. On the final day of his testimony, Bill Cosby returned to the stand carrying a thick legal folder. He looked older, more fragile than before, but there was a determination in his posture. He told the court that what he was about to share had weighed on him for years. Not because the words were his, but because they weren't. "These were sent to me anonymously," he said, lifting 2 worn letters sealed in transparent evidence sleeves. "I didn't ask for them. I didn't know the names of the people who wrote them, but they came to my legal team shortly after I spoke up about what I'd seen. And when I read them, I knew I wasn't alone." The first letter came from someone who claimed to be a former assistant and concierge at a series of high-end industry events connected to Diddy's inner circle. Cosby read the handwritten note aloud, its tone cautious but vivid. They called them suitcase girl, young women who were flown in on short notice. No identification, no baggage. I watched one executive receive a list from an envelope. Each name had a flag beside it. It looked like a menu, but it wasn't food. I quit that night. I couldn't sleep anymore. As murmurs echoed through the courtroom, Cosby unfolded the second letter, this one typed, more structured, and from someone who claimed to be a personal chef hired on contract for Combs's private events. "I was told to memorize 2 menus," the letter read. One was for actual cuisine, what guests would eat. The other was a code-based list for VIP accommodations. We used color-coded stickers. If someone ordered a platinum tray, the servers knew it wasn't dessert. Cosby paused before continuing. "The writer said they feared retaliation if they spoke. They asked me to never share their name, but hoped I would share their truth. So today, I'm honoring that wish." He turned to the judge. "I held these back because I was afraid too, but fear's a poison, and the only cure for it is truth." The prosecution marked the letters as Exhibits 54A and 54B. Diddy's legal team immediately objected, requesting a delay to examine the documents and verify authorship. The judge overruled, on the grounds that the documents were already in the possession of Cosby's defense and were being presented under oath. As the gallery absorbed the revelations, one observer whispered, "That's not hearsay. That's a window into something real. And for the first time, Cosby didn't look like a defendant, or a villain, or a legend fallen from grace. He looked like someone trying to close a chapter by finally opening one no one dared to touch. As the weight of Cosby's testimony settled in the room, all eyes shifted when a new figure entered the gallery. An older man in a pressed navy suit, escorted quietly to the second row behind the prosecution table. Whispers circled the courtroom. Though he was not listed on any public docket, the man was a known former industry fixer, someone whose job had long been to make inconvenient problems disappear for powerful names in entertainment. Cosby looked up and saw him. "Nice to see you again," he said softly into the mic, voice dry. The judge raised an eyebrow, but Cosby was undeterred. "He knows what I'm about to say." Without being sworn in, the man did not speak, but his presence added another layer of tension. The prosecution asked to confirm his identity, and once established, they requested the court record reflect that this individual had been subpoenaed in an unrelated but ongoing federal investigation, connected to illicit business practices tied to entertainment contracts and personnel procurement. Cosby took a slow breath. "I remember 2005, Las Vegas. Diddy hosted something called the Emerald Weekend. No flyers, no sponsors, just invitations. I wasn't on the guest list. I was summoned." He described rooms layered in privacy, lobby floors with fake back entrances, secured elevators that skipped numbered levels. They had rooms you could only access if your key card came with a second chip. Some of the rooms were empty. Some weren't. According to Cosby, he entered one suite that had multiple security screens playing footage on a loop. Some of it looked like backstage party. Some of it didn't. He said he left without speaking a word to anyone. "That was when I realized there were tapes." The defense objected, questioning relevance and authenticity. The judge sustained, but Cosby continued, careful not to cross lines while still painting a picture of secrecy and intimidation. "The man who just walked in," Cosby said, gesturing to the observer in the gallery. "He once told me, 'Diddy's not a person, he's a project.' I didn't know what that meant then. I do now." By this point in the proceedings, the court had shifted from skeptical curiosity to genuine alarm. The judge, a seasoned federal arbiter known for handling organized crime cases, requested a 15-minute recess. Upon return, she addressed the room. "This is not a show trial. This is not entertainment," she warned sternly. "I am allowing these testimonies because of their potential probative value, not because of public interest." But the tension had already spilled beyond the courtroom. News crews were now doubling outside. Hashtags were trending. Former employees, assistants, and silent observers began submitting anonymous statements through legal channels. The prosecution approached the bench with a sealed folder. Inside were transcripts of 2 more accounts, unverified but matching the themes of Cosby's testimony. One included details about a storage facility rented under an alias allegedly used by Combs's team. The other referenced cryptic recordings nicknamed Vault Reels. The judge, visibly disturbed, ruled that the new materials would be reviewed in chambers, but not yet submitted into evidence. Still, the weight of it was clear. Something bigger was unraveling. Cosby leaned forward once more. "This is bigger than me, bigger than him. I'm only here because I stopped being afraid." It wasn't the most polished testimony, but in that moment, the judge allowed it, perhaps understanding that this wasn't about eloquence, it was about something being dragged out from the shadows. The final moments of Cosby's testimony were not filled with spectacle. They were quiet, measured, tired. He looked out over the courtroom, as if unsure who he was even speaking to anymore, his voice more reflective than accusatory. "I'm not here to pretend I'm innocent," he said. "That's not why I came. I came because I know the difference between a mistake and a machine." He spoke of power, how it warps, isolates, and feeds on silence. "I enabled it. We all did. Every time we looked the other way. Every time we said, 'That's just how the business works.' We made it stronger." Then came his closing line, one that would echo far beyond the courtroom walls. "If this is what it takes to end it, then let my name be the last you ever need to hear in that context." He stood slowly, not waiting for the judge to dismiss him. The court fell into complete silence. Not a gavel hit, not a shuffled paper, just the sound of footsteps footsteps as Bill Cosby left the witness stand. For all the controversy surrounding his presence, for all the gasps and objections that peppered his time on the stand, the room knew something had changed. Because silence, real, heavy silence, isn't the absence of noise. It's